So tonight I've got a blank that is another piece of that same madrone. I have already rounded it on the lathe just with a spindle roughing gouge between centers. And I've created a tenon here for my pin jaws. And the pin jaws are perfect for this because there's so much holding power with that thing that it's very unlikely that it's going to come out. And we're going to be working just with the chuck. Now with the, with a regular bowl chuck, I think you could do a decent sized finial. But because the longer you're going to get, the more leverage you've got on it, I think those pin jaws are kind of the way to go. So this section here, the tenon, if you will, I've basically found that making this slightly larger than that works out really well, because as you tighten the jaws down, these come in contact first, but then the back will come in contact. If you make this side larger at all, then the front side of those jaws will never contact this part of the wood. And so it might be really difficult to see, but I've already put this in the pin jaws. And what I'm looking for when I do that is an indentation all the way through that tenon. And so anyway, I don't know if that's visible at all, but I've already got kind of an indentation of those pin jaws. So I know that this tenon is going to be all right. So I'm probably just going to start with it between centers, because I'll be pushing fairly hard in that first couple of passes. And then we'll get rid of the tailstock. So this is also just going to assist me as far as tightening this thing down. You'll notice that I'm obsessively tightening this in multiple locations because, like I said, we at some point we're going to be with no safety net. And I don't want this thing coming out of here. I've got my trusty safety glasses on. You can't see me, so I wanted to make a point of saying that. I'm going to start off using the spindle roughing gouge. This one's probably overkill. It's huge, but it's the kind of go-to one in my shop, and it's consistently sharp. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to leave all of this here and just taper down towards the tailstock. So speed-wise, as inquiring minds like to know, I have no idea, but faster is better. Okay, like I said, the spindle roughing gouge and the tailstock are just there for me to get this thing roughed out as quick as possible. I'm going to remove those now because the rest of the evening, I'm just going to be slowly working my way back. So what the plan is here is I'll work about 1/2 of an inch at a time, and that's going to keep the flex from being an issue, and work my way back, obviously trying to keep it super thin. And so I'll work that in piece and just kind of work my way back, and then eventually get back here and do some sanding and then part it off. As far as design goes, both of these were planless. I would say this one was kind of a little bit modeled after Ashley Harwood's. This little feature here I really liked of hers, and so kind of copied that one. This one I was just playing around, and I really like this shape a lot. I think it's kind of it reminds me of like urns from back in, I don't know, olden times. And then I did one other one that I literally just broke while I was cleaning up tonight, just to give you an idea of how fine these finials are. And this one I was just kind of playing with shape that I would consider non-traditional. Things that you would not normally see, kind of a little sphere on the end there. It almost has like a little baseball bat shape, but anyway, that was my piece of olive, kind of a cool piece of wood, but it broke. So I might glue it back together. We'll see. For the rest of the evening, I'm basically going to be using my little spindle gouge. It's a, I don't know if you call that a detail gouge, but that's what I would call it, I guess. You could use a skew if you are, insane. My skew experience has never been good. And so I will not be using the skew for anything except for maybe getting into the tight spots. So like the features where I can't get the tip of the spindle gouge in, like right in here, that's a perfect moment to use that skew. And I can actually safely use it there. For some reason, I can't safely use it out here. I still have not figured out the tricks of the trade there. But one of these days I'll get there. So yeah, I'm just going to start going for it. If you guys have questions at any moment, feel free to shoot them off. Okay, for those of you who are hearing that nice groaning, resonating sound, that's what you're shooting for to not hear. I am not pushing hard on this tool. It's very sharp at the moment. I was basically just taking off more material than I probably should. But it's a demo and you got to rush through it and break things, right? So anyway, I'm gonna take a last couple of passes here to just hopefully clean it up. And so that little shape there is going to be the top of my finial. And now I just have to start removing material off of this, and that will no longer be touched again with the tool. So it's done. And that's how you basically reduce those harmonics and the balance, or the chatter and all that stuff that's going to eventually break off your finial, is by just doing it a step at a time. So I could get a bowl gouge out. That would work as well. If you're adept with the skew, like I said, you can definitely pull that one out. So as a rule, like you'll hear me pushing hard and you'll hear that resonance. And that's just hopefully the roughing cut. I will try always to come back through and get one cut without any of that noise and chatter. And that just makes it, less sanding basically at the end. When you're watching YouTube videos, you'll hear all these rules about, you can't cut uphill and you can't do this and you can't do that. You do whatever you want. The downside, of course, to cutting uphill would be tear out, right? The vast majority of the time, I'm going to end up sanding this thing quite a bit. So I don't really care too much about it. If I am gonna be traveling uphill, or if I think I should be, which actually it seems like the best way to cut is toward the chuck. You can just remove some material so that now instead of traveling uphill, you can travel downhill towards the chuck. And that's going to be probably your most stable sort of cut. So as far as the little details, like I said, I'm just messing around. I don't have any sort of requirements for what this should look like. I'm not copying a bunch of them to make them look the same. So each one of these is just going to be whatever I feel like putting on it. I will say that, I'll turn that off for a sec so you can maybe hear me a little better, but doing these finials has actually taught me a huge amount about using the spindle gouges in, I guess, any tool in general with a bevel, except for a skew, that is. And I always, basically every time I was using these before doing this, I was always bevel on parallel to the like, I guess between centers, right? Parallel to the lathe. And a lot of the videos I was watching, people were using these tools with the bevel riding on the top or more on the top surface. And what happens is it creates more of a slicing action and you get a very clean cut. And so, and I, for some reason, I was thinking I would end up getting a lot of catches, but that does not seem to be the case. So that was kind of a cool little trick just from watching those other people do these videos. So where you start here, as far as the diameter, it kind of determines everything else. And so, like, how thin do you want it? You got to decide right now, because you won't be able to come back later and make it thinner. Yeah, I might want to go a little bit thinner, but I need some more room. So now I'm back to just cranking away material. If I was smart, I would probably have two of these tools. One that I would just use for those roughing passes to push hard, and then one to keep super sharp for my finishing cut. I think that would be really sweet to be able to just trade, but I just came up with that idea and I don't have one right here with me. So I'm just going to be pushing. Okay, so like right here, I can turn that flute way up, and what I'm doing is basically I'm using the bevel still almost like a spindle roughing gouge. And now the curved kind of wing on this tool is doing the slicing. It's a nice clean cut, and it feels better for some reason. For some reason, I'm trying to make this perfect, and I need to just realize that it's a demo finial. So I think thickness-wise, I'm digging it. It's looking good. My next step here is to just slowly start tapering this thing to make it a larger diameter as it comes back. As far as ratios, Dave might be a better person to talk to about this. He's got the golden ratio as it is, but and some people will talk about, oh, you should just have 3 elements, or and then the spacing, how they all space out, you know, that stuff. I don't know. I think I just lucked out on this first one because the blank just happened to be the right length and the right diameter, and everything just kind of fell together. But it seems like a good ratio. It looks like about 1/3 of the stuff is down here, and then 2/3 is this long, skinny nothingness. And so it kind of, it makes sense in my mind, that kind of law of thirds sort of thing. This one, as you can see, is going to end up a little bit larger diameter, but like I said, this is a demo, and it's not going to end up perfect. But same thing, right? This one, kind of 1/3 down here, maybe 2/3 up here. Yeah, seems like a good rule. I don't know. I will mention that this piece of wood, it was basically a round that I had cut in half, and then it had dried, and then I split that half in half again. So this is 1/4 of a log, and because I split it, the grain is pretty darn straight through there. It's got a little curl on this other side where it's doing some weird things, but ideally that's what you want, is that there should be one grain line going all the way through this thing. If you get any sort of cross grain at all, that's when those tips are going to want to break off. Super easy. So I love that cut where that bevel's resting on there, and I'm just basically slicing and pushing the tool that way. I'm not putting a lot of force on it, and it's basically it's kind of supporting the wood as far as keeping it from vibrating and things like that. Got a little high spot right there, and I want to get rid of it, but I can't. Okay, so I think it's about time to start making some features. Okay, so for this one, it's curved. It's got a kind of a radius this way before it starts into the radius that way, right? Beads and coves, that's all this stuff is. And so what I'm doing is I'm starting out, and this is that kind of cool cut where you can use the bevel, and now you don't have to worry about a catch, pulling it across. If I start out like this, what happens is it catches the tip and wants to drag it across the outside of this thing. And if you have a nice feature there, it'll, you know, ruin it. So what I'm going to do is I'm starting with that bevel basically rubbing, and now I can bring that tip in and cut. And now my handle is going to get pulled back to me in order to make myself around that corner. And what kind of, let's see, what curve is pleasing? Oh my gosh, that's totally up to interpretation, right? But I think there's a magical relationship there. I can't explain it or quantify it, but there's something about curves that change. Like, for example, up here, if I had just made that perfectly cone shaped, it wouldn't be very pleasing, but because it kind of curves in, and same thing with the taper here. I know it looks like crap right now because there's divots and inconsistencies, but all of those will disappear with the wonders of sandpaper. I will also mention that I really hate pin jaw chucks. I have a tendency, because my tool rest is fairly large, I basically bring it inside of the pin jaw chuck over here, which you can't see, sorry. So that it's just inside of this, and so I have a tendency, my knuckle is right there when I'm doing those cuts. It's just a little scary. Okay, so it's time to start rounding over back this way. I basically just need to create some room, and then I can get in there and do some cutting. So I'm cutting uphill. It's kind of one of those things where, like, if you know it's going to chip out a bunch of wood and take off a bunch, then, and you want to remove a bunch of wood, then yeah, why not? So it's going to be a nasty finish, but it's going to chip out a bunch of that wood pretty quickly. Okay, so here's what you got to, now you've got to decide what this is for, or maybe you already knew the whole time and you knew what you were going to do with this. For example, I've got this little vase thing that I made a long time ago, and I was just kind of roughing out some of these to see how they would look as toppers to that. And so cutting a tenon that's the right diameter for that would be an important next step. And then from there, you can work out how much material you have left and what kind of features you want to put in that last little bit. For me, I'm going to assume that the tenon that I made for the pin jaws is the right size. So this is going to be the last visible portion of my finial. And so this last little feature I want to kind of figure out. And I, like I said, I really love this shape. So that's kind of the next one I'll do, where it's concave on the top and convex on the bottom. So this is one of those moments where I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, not only is this probably a little big diameter wise, and I probably should have reduced the size of that, but these two features are now both almost exactly the same diameter this way. And so it doesn't look right. I think I'm going to reduce the size of this one down below that one. Just the last couple of features there. If you were going to part this off, let's say that you still had excess material down here and you wanted to create the tenon exactly the right size, and now you're going to part it off. You can do that. Obviously, you can part it off when it's running. What I like to do with the tool rest when I'm doing that is to rotate it so that it's something like this. And that way, it's nice and close to where I'm parting, but it's really far away over here, so that I can grab this and my hand is not anywhere near the tool rest when I'm kind of cradling that thing. So you're going to end up cradling with one hand and then parting tool here to part that off. Obviously, we need to do some sanding first. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to sand this whole thing. It really actually probably wouldn't take that long to do. But I think it is important just to show you how, even though there's some oddities and some just weird kind of chunky changes in diameter here, those will disappear pretty quick with some sandpaper. So what I've got here, this is some, let's see, I've got some 80 and some 120, and turn the speed down a little bit here. And so like just any sort of imperfection ring you can see there, that stuff will disappear pretty quick. Now obviously you can't push hard, and you've got to really be careful of kind of the wobble of things, but it'll clean some stuff up pretty quickly because there's just not a lot of material there. You can see it's already smoothed out a bunch of that. I do have a little kind of, this section right here looks a little fat. And so I would just spend some time sanding that. Obviously I can't bring the tool, like the spindle gouge, back up here because it would just break it off. You can actually see I've got a little, there's actually an imperfection in there. A little branch of some sort was coming out. And that should have been a little weak spot that maybe broke during this demo, but I don't know how it stayed together. So I would keep going through the sandpaper. Obviously, what I did with these, this is just sanded to 220 and then burnished with the, you know, this lovely stuff, right, that comes off that spindle gouge. I mean, it's just beautiful. And it's almost like packaging, right? You could you could package your little spindle and send it off to your adoring customers. Jeff's comment about the 3-foot long finial. My wife saw the little finials that I made, and she's like, wow, those would be really cool if you made a big one. And I was like, well, I guess I have to now. So anyway, this is our big walnut finial. Eventually, I'll make some sort of vessel for this to top. It'll be, you know, a 6 foot wide. And so that may be another demo.